Grandpa Mordechai was a learned rabbi who earned a living selling spices. He would not consider any payment for rabbinic services. For him, history was not a distant past. It was something to experience with prayers and meditation. Thus, the construction of King Solomon's first temple in Jerusalem in the year 586 before Common Era was not a faraway event, but one to relive with communal prayers and solitary reflection on the month of Av. Each year, on the month of Av, Jews of Morocco wore sacks, sat on the floor, and cried real tears over the destruction of Jerusalem. Similarly, Canaanites, Hittites, and Edomites were not legendary neighbors in ancient Israel, but they were the neighbors, the Amazigh, the Arab, and Christian neighbors who lived next door. I remember Grandpa sitting among his spices in his little store, always with a book in his hand, studying Torah or a Talmud passage, or reciting comforting psalms. Whenever guests showed up, Grandpa would put his books away to welcome each of them in their own language. And his guests responded with reverence as if Grandpa was the holiest man in town. When I showed up at his store, Grandpa treated me as his guest of honor. He made me sit at his side, introduced me respectfully to his clients, but as soon as they left, he opened his books and told me a Seha tale. I grew up in proximity of my paternal grandparents, and I remember the Seha tales told both in Morocco and in Israel. The heritage of the Jews of Morocco has always been a passion of mine, expressed through writing, painting, photography, as well as sculpting and video making. With tales of Seha the sage and Seha the clown, my attention is turned from the texts themselves to the socio-historical significance of Jewish Moroccan tales that reflects upon the transition of a traditional Jewish society into modernity and secularism. Seha, who was transformed into a popular fictional hero by all three storytellers and others, was left behind in Morocco when the majority of the Jews left their homeland in the mid-20th century. Room was made in other narratives for characters influenced by alternative living conditions in Israel and elsewhere. In the Seha tales told by my grandparents, this popular fictional hero is transformed into numerous traditional figures. Some were Jewish, others were drawn from society as a whole. Jewish Seha was the biblical Elijah, but also an Amazigh, a folk doctor. a sailor, and many more transformations. My grandfather's rabbinic education influenced Seha's portrayal as a sage. Grandma Esther's traditional background transformed Seha with humor to suit children's imagination. Grandma Tani, an independent woman with specialized skills who had proximity to political circles, brought increased awareness to socio-economic differences within Marrakesh, within the Jewish community, as well as socio-political changes within the Moroccan society at large. My contribution to Seha's transformation is that of an analyst who goes beyond the telling of Jewish Moroccan tales to delve into their socio-historical significance in relation to the transition of a traditional society into modernity and secularism. Overall, the tales of Seha are about a popular fictional hero in Jewish Moroccan storytelling who embodies a symbolic, self-reflexive narrative representing reality and change. They address religious and socio-economic relations between Jews and Muslims with humor. Subjects are left out while self-respect is maintained with wit. The tales, combined with my commentaries, shed light on structures and processes within the Jewish Moroccan society, as well as on the wider Moroccan society. My recounting of Seha tales is an exploration of little-known aspect of Jewish Moroccan humor. Contemporary Jewish humor is dominated by Jewish comedians originating in Europe and North America. Scholars have rarely written about the humor of Jews from North Africa. In general, Jewish humor tends to elevate the ego in an attempt to assert its invulnerability. Its playfulness provides the pleasure to overcome constraints and inhibitions. Seha humorous tales allow the expression of comical thoughts that would be otherwise forbidden in a Dhima society. Seha, the popular fictional hero in Jewish Moroccan storytelling, is a symbol, a metaphorical character. In Kafka's Metamorphosis, Gregor Samsa, a salesman, is transformed into a despised insect who tries to adjust his living conditions. Psychological and sociological interpretations of Kafka's story focus on changing conditions of the fictional character as well as the conditions of his family, with emphasis on the reduction of their status. Seha of the Jewish Moroccan tales, like Kafka's Gregor, may be viewed as a symbol, as a symbolic expression of Dhima inferiority. However, the Moroccan Jewish Seha tales differ from Kafka's Gregor. They are a humorous declaration of self-appreciation. While Seha is laughed at as a clown, he remains a proud, wise sage, capable of doing good, including even miracles. The Metamorphosis of Seha as a popular fictional Jewish hero, depicts the survival struggles of a disadvantaged community within a majority society which has the power to alter its fate. Seha, as a trope, may have allowed Jewish storytellers the opportunity to express thoughts without offending their neighbors, in the same way that the wise conceal their true ideas to spare people's feeling and to protect themselves from reprisal. This review of Seha's transformation as a popular fictional hero in my grandparents' storytelling accounts, as well as in my commentaries, elaborate on fusions of tropes with socio-psychological and historical realities. They also identify how the metamorphosis serves as a representation of change. The result of World War II gave impetus to Zionism as well as to Moroccan national movement. On the other hand, France also tried to attract the Jewish Moroccan population. Against the background of Morocco's significant economic problems, the establishment of a Jewish state, and the buds of the Israeli-Arab conflict, there was a struggle for the soul of the Moroccan Jews. My grandparents' narratives, along with my subsequent commentaries, fuse creative fiction with personal and family realities. My reflection on the underlying narrative in the Seha tales shed a light on social change and modernization as an autonomous process. I see the adoption of French education as well as the departure of the Jews from Morocco in the narratives in light of a pursuit of emancipation from authoritarianism. Jews leaving Morocco certainly hoped for continued emancipation in their new homelands. Equality facilitated spontaneous progress in Western countries, including France, in comparison to delayed advancement in Israel. Jewish newcomers from Arab lands yearned for continued emancipation through rational democratic processes. Despite fractionalizing pressures, Moroccan Jews in Israel tended to incorporate liberal and rational thinking into traditional rabbinical Judaism in line with the contributions to knowledge development by Harif and Maimonides. The application of reason within traditional thinking facilitated quick integration into Western countries, but delayed absorption in Israel. My analysis of Jewish Moroccan tales indicates that much may be learned from oral accounts about societies with limited written documentation. Tales, as demonstrated here, serve to provide useful information about community organization and economic and political conditions, as well as social change and modernization. Moroccan storytelling, beyond Seha tales, contain rich information worth further scholarly and literary exploration.